there is a group called 36 Months. It's Australian, and there's a guy called Whipper, who's an Australian radio DJ, and he's got behind this group called 36 Months. And 36 months is quite simply the time frame between 13 and 16 at the moment. It's legal, apparently. I don't actually know how they'd make it illegal, like what would they actually do, but it's legal at the moment to be on social media at 13 or something. Well, that's the rules. And they want to make it 16, and the 36 months is actually the time difference between, it's 3 years. So this is the conversation going on at the moment. And this morning on AM, we had Labor and ACT getting in there talking about it. I'm always interested when ACT talks about reducing or restricting something, because that seems to be contrary to the libertarian view. But I guess, in theory, they probably wouldn't fight for alcohol for 8-year-olds. So there probably are lines if they are indeed a libertarian party. So let's have a listen.
If I could get a cheap shot in there first, they're keen to fight for incest.
Okay, leaving that right alone.
I said it was a cheap shot.
Leaving that right alone. So here's the story from this morning about this is just the conversation between ACT and Labor about social media. And then we're going to play you a little bit of commentary about what social media does to the brain of a teenager.
Later on the show this morning, a group that are leading the charge in Australia in a campaign they're calling 36 Months. They want the age that you can register to be on social media to be raised from 13 to 16. And it has cross-party support in Parliament in Australia. Priyanka, you were Minister for Youth. Do you think that this is something that we should be doing here?
I think it warrants looking into further. I mean, just given what we know, the research that we have.
I know I'm not going to interrupt this too much. I'll try not to. I don't know how. I mean, like, you can stop a 16-year-old. Well, you can put boundaries in front of a 16-year-old from buying alcohol by having to go to a location and be served the alcohol. You can't stop it, obviously, from someone else buying it and giving it to them. But what's the hurdle to get across a 13-year-old on social media getting Facebook? You got to put your date of birth in there. Okay, I'll just add 3 years. You know what I mean? It's like, is this in principle only, or is there actually a way they can do it? I don't know. David Seymour actually proved himself to be a complete moron in this conversation, just quietly, but you'll expect that.
So what? Yeah, of course. I've got some very strong thoughts about this, but let's see David try and articulate a coherent position.
Well, David Seymour starts to use examples of websites that aren't social media and says, are they social media? No, David, YouTube is not social media. It's quite easy, actually. Oh, it's just have a little think about it for a second. No problems.
On brain development in young people, the online harms that we know do exist as well. So I think it's worth looking into. I'd want to see a little bit more, I guess, research or some information into how the monitoring and how you'd hold, whether it's companies to account or what the plan is there. But we know that access to social media also increases access to child exploitation and other harms. So what we won't be doing is cutting the very roles in government agencies that are working to address child exploitation and harm, as we're seeing happening now.
But shouldn't we, David, shouldn't we prevent the platforms that are allowing this child exploitation to happen? Shouldn't we prevent young people from accessing them in the first place? Shouldn't we make a stand on that?
Well, I think this is a starting point. Something has gone very wrong in about the last 10 to 12 years. If you look at the number of young people who report mental distress in the annual Ministry of Health survey, it's gone from about 5% in 2012 to something. It's
funny when Seymour goes, something has gone wrong. When I played this bit from Simon Sinek, right, who just explains what's going on, you're like, oh, they know what's gone wrong. They're just either choosing to ignore the research, or they're just knowing the research and they don't know the research, because they know it's very clear what's going on as to why this generation are suffering from these things more than others. They're completely clear on it, without question.
Like 24% now, so almost 5 times as many young people reporting distress. And I suspect that the rise of social media and smartphones everywhere has really changed young people's brains. It's increased the pressures on them, and that is something that as a society we're now working through. So, getting rid of cell phones in schools is partly about focusing on learning, but I think it's partly about giving some time when you don't.
Sorry, if people don't know, the reason I go, ugh, As remember, David Seymour's one of those people who screams nanny state from the highest order when he's talking about the left, yet he's now telling parents what they can and can't do with their kids. You know, it's just, it's just tiring. It's just tiring. And look, and I don't necessarily disagree with the ban on cell phones in schools. You know, I've got kids who have gone through that period, you know, and I get it. But what I don't get is this idea of, you know, nanny state. Look at this Labour-right government telling parents what to do, then they get in and tell parents what to do. It's just tiring, Chewy. Do you want to say anything or should we keep going?
I want to let him finish his thought so I can thoroughly eviscerate him.
All right. So you're telling me to shut up is actually what you're doing, aren't you? Fair enough. Here we go.
Have that digital leash as a young person. And then you come to the question about, well, you know, there's some of these platforms, maybe they should say you can't sign up until you are X or Y age. You know, I'm open to that debate, but I just raise a couple of things. One is that actually getting into the digital world is not all bad. Young people actually get a lot out of that as well. So which activities do you include?
It doesn't have to mean social media. It doesn't have to mean it under the age of 16.
So but then you get into, okay, so would you count YouTube as social media?
No, David.
You can get a lot of rubbish on there, but you can.
It's a pretty easy answer, is it? No. The answer is no, David. YouTube is not social media.
You can also learn some really interesting things on there, and that's why I think you need to start with, well, okay, what are the things that are good about the digital world? Because, you know, the internet, the digital world has done a lot of wonderful things for the world. On the other hand, there are other things that are actually, I think, quite damaging. I'll give you another example. I mean, Wikipedia. Anyone can edit
No,
that.
David.
It's interactive.
For
is that
fuck's
social media?
sake.
Would you allow?
Do you know the saying, okay, boomer? Doesn't it just feel appropriate right now? No, Wikipedia is not social media, David.
I
Fucking
even
hell.
hate the way he says it. Wikipedia. Who says it
Or
like that?
Instagram or TikTok, would you be opposed to that? So,
Well,
you know,
it would
there's-
be easy
yeah.
enough to stipulate that, wouldn't it? To say Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, particularly platforms where that exploitation
Well,
is
there you go. We're making it up. We could create the policy here.
Why
But I
don't you?
just make the point that
She's just listed some valid social medias. You're going, what's a social media anyway? And 3 are listed. Oh, well, let's just make it up. Well, just listing some actual social medias.
I think there are some questions that you actually have to work through a bit carefully. So, yep, there's something going really wrong with young people and mental health, and we can see the evidence of that. I think changes are happening. The school cell phone ban is an example of that. But also, you've got to be a bit careful of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. All right. So there you go, Chewy. I'm going to play you another clip shortly about what, and like I said, he's either playing dumb or he is dumb, because we know the answer as to why this is happening, and I'm going to play it for you in a second. But before you self-implode,
maybe Atlas just haven't told him what social media that they want to use. But like, I love this position that social media has somehow fucking damaged our kids and completely ignores the older generations it's absolutely destroyed since COVID. I think everybody in the chat here has a relatives whose brain has absolutely been cooked by Facebook.
yeah,
Look, and as much as I want to make jokes about it, kids on social media, I'm not a parent. I empathize incredibly with people like yourself, Pat, who have to navigate the fact that their kids are trying to work in a world that didn't exist when you were their age.
Yeah.
That is frightening. And I see it in parents all the time. And I think hitting let's ban it is the fucking easy button. But it is literally throwing the bathwater out with the baby. You know, I did that round the wrong way. But you get the idea.
We're with you.
Social media is an incredibly useful tool.
Yeah.
But it's also that pipeline where bullying used to stop at the school gate and now it goes right into the kid's bedroom. Again, that is terrifying.
Yeah. So you're right. What it is, it's not anything new. It's just a new delivery service. So
Yes,
kids used to
yes,
get
exactly.
bullied in the playground, and then they'd go home. And then they'd get bullied in the playground, and maybe they'd get prank phone called. And then they'd get bullied in the playground, and maybe they'd get an email or two. And then they get bullied in the playground, and now it comes to their phone. So the bullying side hasn't changed. The delivery method has. And because it's so much more effective at delivering, there are different consequences that come from that. I'll play.
And I think
Oh, you go. Yep.
I think
Yep.
there's a whole conversation about how things like algorithms delivering content to people and how it radicalizes people. There's an argument outside of that for any age, but I think when we look at this generation, the kids that are growing up with it, they are more media savvy than any other generation before us, because they're immersed in it. And I think for a government to go, yeah, let's make it 16, they'll get around it. They'll find a new platform. These guys in government setting this legislation are so removed from this generation that they don't understand the technology, they don't understand the platform, and they won't react quick enough to move to whatever's next.
Yeah.
The actual solution to this, in my opinion, as someone that works with people that have these concerns, what do I do for my kid who's getting his first smartphone, is the same as a lot of other things that parents are scared of: sexual education, bullying, alcohol and drug use, that sort of thing. Fucking talk to your kids.
Yeah.
They must always have a pathway to go to you as a parent and go, this thing happened and I'm telling you about it, rather than feeling this thing is banned, I shouldn't be on it, I'll get in trouble if I talk to my parents. You isolate them in that bubble. Rimmer is not a parent.
One of the things about this is also the trust we have for those people. We talked about Christopher Luxon's independent review last week, and we were like, this is of the marae, Manurewa marae. And it's not that necessarily many people here, at least, thought that was a bad idea. It's, can we trust him? And I feel a bit the same, because some of these ideas aren't necessarily bad, and some of this should be laid at the feet of parents. This is where I go on my parenting rant now, is that I'm really sick and tired of parents going, what can I do? I was in a group the other day. Like, I go out and have breakfast with a group of businessmen once every 2 weeks, and they were talking about it. And I actually posted the video I'm about to show you, and I said, you are the parent. You still do have agency. How does a kid get an iPhone? Well, they get it through you. You can still be involved in these processes. Parents don't have to go, if a 10-year-old's got an iPhone, those parents are whatever the R word is we use now instead of the R word. Whatever that word is, that's what they are. We had a very clear rule in our household. There was no cell phones in primary school. Intermediate school, we had a whānau phone. We called it the whānau phone. I've still got it. It's right here, actually. Whānau phone, and that basically was a family phone that when the kids went on a sleepover or they needed to be picked up, they could take it with them, but they didn't own it. My kids didn't get a cell phone until they were in the first year of secondary school. Now, I'm not saying that we've got it all right and they've got it all wrong. We still have no phones in your bedroom, 14-year-old, overnight. You can actually put things in place to do this. There is an element of this overall topic that parents don't have to just go, all their friends have got them. What am I supposed to do? You're in charge. You're in charge. The child's not in charge. You're in charge. The other thing, though, as well, and you were talking about COVID and stuff, there is this slice of a generation who have had the shittest hand dealt to them. It's like, if you look at like an 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old now, the guys and girls that were finishing school through that COVID lockdown and starting university through that COVID lockdown, you can see issues to do with mental health and, confusion and low achieving and missing out and isolation. In my opinion, and in my anecdotal evidence from looking around me to a lot of parents, far more significantly than not even the generation before them, than the same generation that were a bit older, or that the same generation that's coming up now. There is a real, and I would say 18 through 21-year-old, just if you guys know people in that age group, just think about the number of kids 18 to 21, not 25, not 15, who are like anxious, who have mental health issues, who can only do one paper at university because that's all they can have. my observations are it's really significant, and it happens to be that slice of that generation that went through COVID as maturing adults, late school, early university. And you put that into the frame as well with what we're seeing out there now, and it's devastating. I'm going to play this for you now, unless you want to respond to anything I've said, Chewy.
No, play the clip. I've got something else to show afterwards.
All right. So this guy's called Simon Sinek, and many of you would have seen this. This has been around for a few years now. So he was talking about millennials in the workplace. Now, millennials in the workplace now, I think millennials started about 25, don't they? So they're an older generation. But the thing that's important about this to me is when he talks about what social media and what cell phones do to your brain. This is a 3-minute clip. If you have not seen this, pay attention if you've got people in your life who are teenagers. And I watched this with my kids probably 10 times over the space of 5 years, because when they said things like, but I want that, and I'd go, dude, let's watch this again. Let's talk out what social media and phones can do to a young mind. So I included my kids in these conversations. I don't know if it worked or not. That was a path we took, but let's have a listen to what Simon Sinek says of the research.
Technology. We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good, right? So, we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely. And so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, hi, 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 hi. Because it feels good when you get a response, right? Right? It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower, did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it. It's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive. Right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important?
Yeah, this is really good as well. We could just cut it there, but what he talks about is how is that going to impact people through their life, and he relates it to if we agree that the dopamine hits you get from a phone are equivalent on some level or in the same ballpark as alcohol, then what we're seeing is the same habits of people as they grow older going to social media as ones in the past have gone to alcohol. So how to deal with life using alcohol, people are now dealing with life using social media and phones.
Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe, right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired. And what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them if something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook, right? These things balanced. Alcohol is not bad. Too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun. Too much gambling is dangerous, right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance.
There you go. Now, I would challenge any parent to watch that and then go, sweet as, here you go, have a phone. But look, I'm not trying to play both sides of this. I'm not saying so I support what David Seymour's doing. I'm saying if we're going to have a conversation, let's have the conversation, not play this stupid game of, well, I don't know why. There seems to be some strange reason why these kids are not. It's like, no, we know what the research is. We know why it is. Now let's address it. Chewy.
Yeah. The core point out of there is, for me, is yes, everything in moderation.
Yeah.
But when you're growing a functional human, trying to mold a child into an adult that can think and make their own decisions, and everybody knows in the teenage years, that's the risk-taking years. Kids are working out what they can and can't get away with. And we've tried things, and you can look at some of the things that he's talking about, say alcohol use and that sort of thing. When everything's locked away and no, you have to wait until you're 18, you have a couple of things. You have someone that is sneaking around behind their parents' back to get at the thing that they were told that they can't have.
Yeah.
Or people arriving at 18 and the attitude is fucking have at it. No rules. Just go crazy. And this massive overcorrection of this thing that they haven't been able to have. The thing that I am talking about is that you need to introduce someone to something. You need to establish some ground rules. Yes, don't take your phone into your bedroom. Don't have a computer in your room. Give yourself some space to be away from this thing that can be the best thing in the world, can be the worst. But I think when parents go, maybe there's people that agree with David that they should be banned. Forget the mechanics of how it works, all of that sort of thing. It sounds good to them because they can put off that problem. They can just pretend that the modern world doesn't exist for a little bit longer. But I think they're just kicking the can down the road a little bit. Hopefully, hopefully this doesn't tip my hat about where I work too much, but this is an example of the organization that I work for has put together. Parents need to know. And it's about exploring the stuff with the child.
Yeah.
It is learning the stuff with the child. It's understanding how the stuff works. Teaching. Agreeing to and planning to and modeling the behavior that you want.
Yeah.
I mean, what a kick in the nuts for the kid if you're told, no, you can't use social media. Mum and dad are going to sit on the couch and do Facebook all night, but you can't.
That's like that classic example of, trying to get your kids to stop smoking. Well, but fuck, Dad, you smoke. It's just, it doesn't work, does it?
Yeah, it does not work.
Yeah.
And I think for difficult subjects, it's real easy to hit it's not my problem, let's ban it, let's put that problem off, all of that sort of thing. I think David Seymour is the wrong person to talk about this.
Yeah.
I think this is another thing that schools, the people that spend an enormous amount of time with that young person, need to be engaged with. And I think this is something that our government talks about, reading and writing and maths and all of that sort of stuff. One of the absolute critical things that I think that our schools are still not given room to do is critical thinking with media.
Yeah. Yes. Media
like
studies.
How information is developed, how people are messing with that information, how you can be influenced and how you can stop it. And this comes under that umbrella.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of older generations just poo-poo away the subject of media studies, but it would come under that aspect. Yeah. It comes under that aspect of staying safe, both in the meat space and the virtual space, the online space. But schools can't do that because, as I read in a story today, they want to focus on teaching kids cursive. Why not just teach them how? Yes.
Is that coming back? Cursive?
But yeah, the Teachers Association is pushing back big on that today. I mean, just teach them fucking Morse code or how to write with a quill. At that point, it's crazy. These guys are so enamored with looking backwards that they are setting kids up to absolutely fail in the modern world.
Yeah.
But you know,
Right.
I'm going to acknowledge, not a parent, don't have kids. I have not had to deal with this, but
Well-
I've spoken to many parents that do. I've got friends that have kids. I acknowledge how fucking scary that is.